here to talk about, if you're asking me who's to blame, I say the assailant, much like Douglas Murray said that the Christchurch killer, the one who massacred the Muslims in the mosque, that only the killer was to blame, not those who radicalized him into viewing Muslims as a threat to the West.
What you'll find is that if somebody put millions of dollars on someone's head, yours for instance, or mine, and somebody then attacked us, you would think that the person who had put millions of dollars on our head would bear some responsibility.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are good. Guys, today we're going to be reacting to "You're a Dishonest Wiesel," Douglas Murray schools Muslim on terrorism. Guys, this should be a whole lot, so let's go right down to this.
Do you agree with anybody who comes up with the sentence, "He was to blame for being knifed in broad daylight 15 times in his neck"?
If you're asking me who's to blame, I say the assailant, much like Douglas Murray said that the Christchurch killer, the one who massacred the Muslims in the mosque, that only the killer was to blame, not those who radicalized him into...
You are about to witness a thought-provoking debate between Douglas Murray, a staunch defender of free speech, and Abdullah al-Andalusi, focusing on the aftermath of the Salman Rushdie incident. In this heated debate, Murray emphasizes the sacrosanct nature of free speech, challenging the notion of its limits in light of provocative art and literature.
So for us tonight, there's one big question. Is there such a thing as too much free speech, or should we always defend the right to offend? Now, joining me from New York, I'm joined by conservative author Douglas Murray. To quote Piers Morgan, Douglas, has the world gone nuts, my friend?
You said at the beginning, is there any limit to free speech? And I'm rather disturbed we're still discussing this. It's 3 decades and more since the Satanic Verses affair. It was in 1989 that the Ayatollah Khomeini did the unpardonable, unforgivable thing of calling for the murder of a British novelist for the crime of writing a novel. And we had these debates back then. Where are the limits to free speech? Has Mr. Rushdie committed a crime as well as the Ayatollah? And a lot more guff like that. I'm rather disturbed that in all of the decades since, with all the people who've been killed for asserting their right to free speech, or asserting their right to say what they think and for the rest of us to hear it, but we're still at this elementary playground level of discussion. I'm sorry to say that, but this is a long, long answered question. Our societies have perfectly good incitement laws in place. The rest of it, I'm sorry, no, we're not adapting our own speech codes. We're not going to make ourselves more sensitive to people who famously burn books that they can't even read. I mean, the Ayatollah Khomeini had never even read the Satanic Verses when he asked Muslims around the world to kill Salman Rushdie. It's an unpardonable thing that has happened. It is extraordinary to me that we're still having this discussion. Mm-hmm. We had the same discussion 7 years ago when the cartoonists of Charlie Hebdo were being murdered. We had the same discussion in all of these decades, and it's Muslims and non-Muslims who've been attacked, and we in the West still have this pathetic discussion about, oh, what are the limits of free speech? Really, we've got to get better than that.
Douglas, I agree with you, but it's not just Islam, is it? We'll talk to Abdullah al-Andalusi in a minute, but it's also comedy. We talked about Dave Chappelle, we talked about Jimmy Carr. There doesn't seem to be a week that goes by without some comedian making a joke that a certain group, a certain number of people find distasteful. I obviously
might be true.
I obviously come from a different planet, because here's what I would say. We have an on-off button. If you want to go and see a comedian, you buy a ticket. If you want to watch a television programme, you pick that channel. If you want to read Salman Rushdie's book, you surely have a right. Are we not getting to the point where free speech is under attack in our world, in our nation?
It's been under attack for a long time. I don't particularly care for a lot of the sort of belly aching and complaining on rather frivolous online stuff that I hear from a lot of authors and others. I think that people have to toughen up a bit on some of that. But the Rushdie affair has always been in a different class, and there's a reason for that. And there's a reason why so many people today are willing to make death threats against authors and others for all sorts of things, including comedians. And it's because they saw that it works. Yeah. It works. When the Ayatollah called for the murder of Salman Rushdie, people on the left and right of British politics and of British culture made excuses for the fatwa. I'm sure we'll hear some excuses today. They learned, our societies learned, that if somebody says, I'm offended, and then says, and as a result, I'm going to kill, you better be damn sure that you're willing to die for that. And unfortunately, the success of the Ayatollah's fatwa, among other things, is that it showed a load of other disgruntled people what they could do if they only had the disgustingness to think that they could exercise violence as an opposition to the pen. And I'm afraid that what happened, as I say, is that Muslim extremists across the UK and across the world showed they could intimidate people, and others undoubtedly have learned from this. But let's remember, Britain in 1989, we allowed Muslims in Bradford to burn the Quran, the satanic verses on the streets of Britain. We allowed prominent figures like Cat Stevens to excuse the murder of Salman Rushdie on the television. We allowed Iranian officials who had called for Rushdie's murder to live in London. Like, how stupid are we?
Interesting, Douglas. Thank you for Now in New York. Let's pick up now with journalist Martha Gill, Emma Wedd from the Free Speech Union, co-founder of the Muslim Debate Initiative, Abdullah Al-Andalusi. Let's start with you, if we can, Abdullah. Quite a strong rhetoric from Douglas Murray. I'm always aware that Muslim extremists do not in any way speak for the majority of Muslims, but to be fair, the Iranian government over the weekend said Rushdie was to blame for being attacked. That is completely and utterly despicable, isn't it?
Well, firstly, I find it rather strange that Douglas Murray, who's had a history of advocating for restrictions on Muslim speakers at universities...
But you can answer my question. Do you think it's despicable that the Iranian government have said that he took it on himself? He was stabbed in broad daylight. Do you find that despicable?
But if I may, he deigns to say he's a champion for free speech, so to speak, but yet his organisation argued for restrictions for platforms for Muslim speakers going to universities. He wanted to ban the burqa in public buildings and a kind of social ban on it in public. So for him, and argued that conditions for Muslims in Europe must be made harder across the board.
Let's bring Douglas back in. Douglas, wait.
I find it a little. I find it a little bit strange that he should deign to call himself, brazenly call himself, or at least imply some kind of champion for free speech. Free expression.
Look, I've probably got to answer that. You'll have noticed, and all of your viewers will have noticed, that this Islamist lunatic in your studio can't answer the basic question. Let's try it again and make it simple for you. Why don't you say whether or not you are completely condemning of any violence against Salman Rushdie or anyone else who is deemed to have said something heretical? Why don't we start with the basics for you?
Okay, firstly, I want to answer his question, because he asked me first, which is about the Iranian regime. Well, having not being an Iranian citizen nor participated in any elections to elect the Iranian regime, the Iranian regime doesn't really represent 1.8 billion Muslims. And
okay, so if you're here representing 1.8 billion Muslims, it's very simple. Douglas has just said it. All right, as your own self, having heard what he said, do you accept people saying, be it the Iranian government or Muslim extremists, and I made the caveat and I repeat it, Muslim extremists, that one of the biggest problems I have is that people look at the whole thing and they shouldn't. Do you agree with anybody who comes up with the sentence, he was to blame for being knifed in broad daylight 15 times in his neck? Do you?
The only person to blame for the knifing of Salman Rushdie is the assailant himself.
Not the Iranian regime who put the fatwa on him in the first place.
Well, unless you can demonstrate that they were specifically colluding or they sent an agent.
They said he was to blame.
He was in communication with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard.
That's their opinion, right? But I'm only here to talk about, if you're asking me who's to blame, I say the assailant, much like Douglas Murray said that the Christchurch killer, the one who massacred the Muslims in the mosque, only the killer was to blame, not those who radicalized him into viewing Muslims as a threat to the West.
What you'll find is that if somebody put millions of dollars on someone's head, yours for instance, or mine, and somebody then attacked us, you would think that the person who had put millions of dollars on our head would bear some responsibility. But because you're such a dishonest weasel, you're not even willing to do that. You're not even willing to do the basic thing of condemning the attack.
Sticks and stones, Douglas Murray, sticks and stones. You need to demonstrate that the person was motivated by the reward.
I'll tell you what I'd like to motivate. I'll tell you what I'd like.
In an era where the boundaries of free expression are constantly tested, Douglas Murray's argument stands as a beacon of clarity. He posits that the response to Salman Rushdie's "the satanic versus a fatwa calling for Rushdie's death" exemplifies a dangerous inclination to suppress dissenting voices under the guise of protecting religious sentiments. Murray's critique extends beyond this singular event. touching on a systemic issue within modern discourse, the conflation of criticism with blasphemy, and the subsequent justification of violence as a means of silencing opposition. The debate spotlights the critical distinction between speech that is merely offensive to some and speech that constitutes direct harm or incitement to violence. Murray emphasizes that while societies have established legal frameworks to address direct threats and incitement, the subjective perception of offense should not serve as a basis to curtail freedom of expression. Drawing from Murray's insights, it becomes evident that the defense of free speech is not merely about protecting the rights of the individual, but about preserving the foundational principles of a free and open society. He underscores the danger of capitulating to demands for censorship based on subjective offense, highlighting how such concessions can erode the very fabric of democratic discourse. Murray's arguments resonate with the views of other prominent thinkers and defenders of free speech. For instance, John Stuart Mill, in his seminal work on liberty, argued that silencing an opinion is essentially robbing humanity, posterity as well as the existing generation, those who dissent from the opinion still more than those who hold it. Mill's assertion that the clash of ideas is necessary for the discovery of truth underscores Murray's defense of free speech as a catalyst for societal growth and understanding.
So guys, I'm so shocked. Like, they literally stabbed someone 15 times, broad daylight. Things are happening. Hey, things are happening though. But guys, this okay, let's talk about when the anchor asks the guy a question, like the journalist. I find it weird that some people know the answer to some certain questions, but then they try to like cover it up, with beating around the bush and all those things. I mean, how can you really on live TV say that only the person who attacked the victim is the person to blame? I mean, if someone is constantly receiving death threats, obviously the person sending the death threat is to blame too. You cannot just blame the person who stabbed the guy. I mean, let's take for example his case as a scenario. You cannot just blame the person who stabbed him. But just like what Douglas said, imagine someone putting $1 million on your head. Literally, anybody will want to kill you to get that money. So then, won't you at least say that that person who put money on your head for you to be killed is also part of the whole thing? Like, literally, all of them are to be blamed. You can't just blame the killer. But then again, I really feel like in this present day, our free speech is being attacked, because it's more like someone can literally say what they have in their mind to say because they feel like they'll get attacked from. Imagine just like people receiving death threats. There was a video I reacted to. It should be on my channel. The lady came out online and she said she was no longer a Muslim. I think she uploaded a video of her in like a bikini, something like that, and then she was receiving different types of death threats. I don't know if I should say it's because she was no longer a Muslim, but yeah, connected to the whole she's no longer a Muslim, she was receiving different type of death threats. And I'm like, she has the right to worship whatever God she wants to worship. She has the right to pick her own religion. If she doesn't want to be a Muslim anymore, she has that right. If someone is a Christian and wants to convert to Islam, they have that right. It is within their right. So I don't see why someone shouldn't be able to express themselves just because of what the people around them think. Like it's really, really bad, and it's happening a lot because a lot of people have many things to say, but because of things like this, death stress and all, they can't even like pitch out their own opinion. I feel it's bad. But guys, you tell me what you think about this. Don't forget to like, subscribe to my channel. I love you guys.